Today's subject is, what is your Dharma? Dharma means, what is your path? What is the right action to do in life? When I was a boy, growing up in California as a teenager in the 60s, my generation observed society and the way it was looking and determined that society's approach to life wasn't really working very well. Because by and large, people weren't very happy. And society was in tumult. And society's still in tumult. But the basic value system that was preached by the Judeo-Christian ethic and the authoritarian approach of government and education and society was incredibly oppressive and very closed-minded and very narrow, and we didn't like it because we weren't happy. And isn't that really the Dharma that we grow up thinking? The thing that we think that we're supposed to be in life is happy. And we basically seek things that we think will make us happy, and then we find out after doing them if in fact they will or they won't. The problem is that we can't always get to the things that we think that will make us happy. We have to do things that we don't want to do, which kind of makes us unhappy. And then even when we do the things that make us happy, at some point, we're done doing them. And now my happiness is diminishing, and in fact, maybe I'm unhappy because I can't continue. Like the child who says, I want one more cookie, I want more. And this is really the slogan of materialism, which is, I want more, I want more, I want more. And while society advertises, you'll be happy if you get more. If you get more, you find that you're actually not happy, because you always want more and more. So you could say that many in my generation in the 60s, we sought an alternative to the mainstream of society, and thus the hippie generation was born, the flower children. And they took the approach that all of life is about love and brotherhood, and basically along with love and brotherhood came you know what's coming: drugs, sex, and rock and roll. And these were the things that we entered into with full enthusiasm. And well, history tells us that it didn't work. You know, there's still a few hippie camps around the world, but basically people moved on. And if it had created the millennium, if it had created the perfect society, people would have stayed with it because it was working. And, well, let's think about it. Just since that time in history, were there any pathways that people followed in order to experience happiness on an ever-increasing basis from that breakout and continue to doing it? And if we look at what happened, there was some groups of people who graduated from hippiedom and the negative, you could say, reaction to society, and shifted their focus to a truly deeply spiritual focus. And then you find that all around the world there are spiritual communities that were started 40, 50 years ago, and some even more, that are still going. Well, now, why have they lasted where the fantasy of the hippie, I mean, that was the fantasy, love, and everything was happy. Don't work, just play. You know? Why have those groups that have continued and who have created, certainly we could say, a range of levels of happiness, and we could look at some of those groups and say that some behaved better than others. But there's a reason why those groups have lasted longer. And the reason is because they found a Dharma. They found a sense of purpose. They found a sense of purpose that harmonized with their internal sense of rightness and well-being. And if we separate the ones that were maybe less successful and more successful, we could say that the ones that the common denominator in the whole range is that those people found purpose. They found a purpose in living, where the purpose of self-indulgence doesn't provide any stability. If you think about the jet setters on the planet who have seemingly bottomless pockets of money, and they fly to, Paris for lunch and London for dinner, and they're on the big, their private yachts on the Mediterranean. And is that group of people happier than people who are living simply in the forest with positive purpose? No, they're not. The rate of suicide in that group is just as high as every other strata of society. And sometimes it's even higher, because when people have experienced the peak of what is considered to be the best of human life, and they haven't found a sense of well-being and happiness through it, where do they go next? They feel desperate, they don't know what to do, and then they sometimes give up. There was an interesting, there's a saying, Yogananda used to say this, but I don't really remember the root of whether he invented it or it came from somewhere else. But he quoted this. He said, I dreamt, and I dreamt that life was beauty. But when I woke, I found that life was duty. And then as I lived my duty well, I found that life was beauty. And this really captures our sense of Maya, the hypnotism that keeps us thinking that indulgence of senses and emotions will make us happy, gives us the idea that constant self-indulgence is the best way to live. But history tells us that it just that doesn't work. And anybody who's tried it finds a sense of hollowness inside. Having said that, we have to figure out what is duty. What is that path that we should follow, because we can see that they're not all equal. In society that I grew up with, and I think it's pretty common, most societies will say, okay, you grow up, you go to school, you then go out and maybe you serve your country in the armed services, and then you buckle down, you get a job, and get married, raise babies, and then when you get old enough, you retire and put your feet up. And then the classic American view, I think Australians might have something similar. If you look at the bulk, go down to the beach, put your feet up, and drink a beer. And this is like, I lived in Hawaii when I got out of high school, and because I was a surfer, and we saw these busloads of tourists come. Now here's the people who had worked their whole life, and then finally they got their gold watch, and they're retired, and now they're on the vacation that they've waited for, all these 30 or 40 years of, oh man, I can't stand this job. Now they're there, and they get off the bus in their print Hawaiian shirts that they just bought in the gift shop, and now they've come to one of the most beautiful beaches in the world. And they stand around and they look about, 10, 15 minutes, and then, okay, let's go. Oh, can't wait to get back and have a drink, When did that, there was a point at which they really stopped living and became minimal, in a form of minimalist that says, I am not striving for happiness. I am just seeking to, like we say, the hamster on the treadmill. I'm just trying to get through. And in American culture, one of the popular restaurants is called TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. See, now I'm going to get the weekend off. And then everybody's going to complain about having to come back to work on Monday morning. What are the percentage of people who actually enjoy, to any degree, what they do? Although you can look at many jobs and simply say that if you give your full attention to your job, you will, in that process, take your mind off your problems. So many people, when you have intense sorrow, well, do something. If you do something, then it'll shift your energy from going into sorrow. It'll redirect it, and you'll at least not be in that pain, and over time it will diminish. Yes, there is a time and a place to enter into the sorrow, but at a certain point, you redirect yourself because it's unnecessary, and sometimes a point at which it's unhealthy, making a bad situation worse if we go too far in that direction. So we redirect our energy, and we at least do something, almost anything. It takes your mind off of the things that you don't want to think about. But you see, then people live a whole life kind of doing that, kind of living in such a way, I'll just stay busy, I'll get through it, and grim determination, and I just got to get that Go Watch and that retirement fund, and then once I get there, and the ups and downs of daily life, you're just trying to get through them because you don't understand them, and you can't see any purpose to it all, and then some people get to the point of asking the question, what is the point? What is the point of my life? Why have I gone through all these ups and downs? Isn't there some greater meaning than just feeding the body and keeping it from being too cold in the winter and too hot in the summer? And people get in front of that television, and it's called the boob tube for a reason, or the idiot box, because you just zone out. It's a form of intoxication, really. Stimulate the brain cells and the body just. But it doesn't go into a good place. It goes into an empty place. People can do it for a long time because it stimulates, but it's not a deep place. Most people would agree that the most satisfying, comforting, fulfilling experience in life is love. Really, when you feel love flowing towards you or through you towards others, this is really the most, if we want to say, soul satisfying, center satisfying, the most fulfilling. It's sort of like if you're really hungry, you've been out trekking in the bush, and you get back to society, and now you can eat whatever you want, and you're super hungry, and you eat your favorite food, and it's just like, oh, wow. And your whole body just takes it in, with complete enthusiasm. Love is the most satisfying meal to the soul, to the heart, to our very center. When we experience love, we experience that which is most satisfying to us. And to the extent that a person does not feel any love in their life, they are in the darkest place. And to the extent that they do feel love, they are, in a human sense, in the terms of human personality, emotional experience, they're in the best space you can find. But just like I was talking about different communities of different levels of positive purpose and levels of attainment, there are greater levels of love that even a person in a, the average loving circumstance, there are greater levels of love. And over the centuries, we've seen examples of that love. And that's generally associated with the saints. The saints express a love that is greater than the individualized personal love of human relationships, as in two people or a family or even a community can experience. Yes, they can experience something, but if we leave it on that emotional level, it's subject to the ups and downs of life, and you can't maintain it. And in common human interaction, we have ups and downs. I like you today, I don't like you tomorrow. I love you today, I hate you tomorrow. When we live through the emotions, you simply cannot maintain a high level of emotional experience. It can't be done. We keep trying, stimulate the emotion, but you can't maintain it. There's always an up-down equal. The yogic view of life is that in the whole journey through the creation, all of the experiences that we have, pleasant and unpleasant, up and down, at the end of the journey, it has to equal 0. It all gets balanced out. We all end up living an equal amount of up we like and an equal amount of down we don't like. It creates this balance. So by the very nature of living an outward experience through the personality and the emotions, we're set up for 0. We can't get anywhere. There will always be a limit to what we can accomplish. But as we see in the lives of saints, and regardless of their religious beliefs, we see that they all do something that's the same. They all spend time in inner connection. They all spend time withdrawing from society in a variety of ways for a variety of amounts of time, but they go inside and through that inner connection, because we all know we experience love in the heart center, that happiness is within, they have figured out a way to go in there. And they spend time in there, and that's so transformative that when they interact with the world, there is an incredible, powerful, loving presence that is inclusive, that has no limit. It's not based on, that love is not dependent on how people react to them. It's only a flow that goes out. They need absolutely nothing. They don't need people to love them, because they live in a powerful flow of love. You see, we think we need people to love us. But if you're experiencing love, love is something that flows through you and it flows out. And if it has any conditions on it, it's not divine love, it's human love. Human love is conditional. Divine love is unconditional. So if I love somebody, I don't need them to love me back. They can be any way they want. We would look at a parent, look at the child and say, a parent, the perfect parent, loves the child unconditionally, whether they're healthy or not, whether they're easy to get along with or not, whether they become a criminal or not. They don't condition that love. Most humans do, but we do have this ideal, which we only see in the saints. They somehow can love without condition. And that's because they've connected to universal love, which is beyond the ups and downs of the personality. So, what do they do to connect to that? They connect inside. And you can call it love or God or the mana of the creation or whatever you want to call it, but it is core to our sense of fulfillment in life, our happiness. And the thing is, we think that in order to experience love, others have to love us. And you see, the ego that we've grown up through is in the state of mind which says, I want people to like me. And even better is if they love me, you see. But now we're seeking to become fulfilled by the actions of others, which are unreliable. And most people are living in this state, I like, I don't like. So they love you when you do what they want, and they don't love you when you do what they don't want. Their love is conditional. But the truth is that if somebody loves me, how do I actually experience that love? I can experience it in some ways by their good deeds towards me. If they help me, if they comfort me when I'm unhappy, if they enjoy spending time with me. All of those human ways we recognize that people are saying, I care about you because I'm with you and I am serving you and I allow you to serve me sometimes. It becomes a two-way street. And so, because love is not just about what comes to you, it's what comes through you. And in fact, this is even more important. When we talk about our Dharma in life, what purpose do I have in living at all? And if there is a purpose, is it connected to happiness, or am I just supposed to suffer all the time? That's God's purpose. And there are people who think that the purpose of life is to suffer. And only if you suffer well, then you'll get into heaven, and then you'll be happy. You see? The experience of love flowing through your consciousness is the source of happiness. Love, well-being, that universal sense of positive energy flowing through your consciousness. When you feel love flowing through you, you feel love. You think, oh, well, I'm giving it away. I won't have it anymore. See, that's the ego's mind. If you give your love to somebody, then you don't have it. But this is completely wrong. The more love you give, the more love you experience. This is why we say goodness is its own reward. When you act with positive energies flowing through your consciousness, you are being rewarded right here and now with positive feelings, and to the extent that they're connected to universal potential, they have an unlimited potential for well-being. But as long as we think my happiness is determined by the things that give me, and why do I have to pay for them? Why should I have to do anything for anything? I deserve it. Everybody just give me what I want. And that consciousness leads to incredible suffering. And yet society preaches that the goal is to become really wealthy, so you have people waiting on you hand and foot. This is, it just simply doesn't work. So, when I look at my Dharma in life, and I say, well, I want to live a good life, a successful life. What do I need in order to be successful in life? I need to access universal potential, universal love. It's got to flow through my life. And the things that it flows to are very secondary. Very secondary. We think that Dharma is, oh, should I be a doctor or a lawyer? Dharma is, should I marry this person or that person? No. The universe doesn't really care that much. You can be a street sweeper. You can be an architect. But the consciousness that flows through you while you're doing that activity is the thing that makes all the difference. Jesus said it as well as anybody. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then all these things shall be added unto you. When we seek what is God, seek God first, that's the love. And we talk about this in the yoga teachings, the 8 attributes. God is love, bliss, peace, wisdom, power to do things, the light, the vibration of spirit, peace, calmness, joy. This is these elemental, universal, foundational qualities that have unlimited potential. And then our adventure, because the universe apparently is trying to have an adventure through our lives. That's our Dharma. We are supposed to be the director of everything, has sent us into the creation to live well with universal peace, love, and joy, and to share it. And you can share it by making pizza. You can share it by doing charitable works. You can share it by having a family relationship. You can share it by living alone in a cave in the Himalayas. Those outward things are not the issue. The issue is, how can those universal positive forces flow through this life? And if you could jump to the end of your life and look back, you'd clearly see that you were born to do certain things. And you might see places, forks in the road, that you could have taken that shifted the timeline of your life. But in the end, the way that you value your life is to the extent that these positive energies flow through you, regardless of the choices that you made. And you might be able to look at, wow, I probably could have helped more people if I'd gone this way. I made a choice that limited my ability to experience this. So I ended up in a job that I hate, but I was afraid to leave the job because I had financial obligations, and we get stuck, and then we think, oh, I can't get out of this. We become prisoners of our own limited thinking. When I first came to Ananda, we were a bunch of young people. We didn't have any money. We just barely had enough to survive. And there was a lot of different jobs to do at different times, and our attitude became, well, what needs to be done rather than what do I want to do? See, what needs to be done, not what do I want to do? And in this way, we're giving up our narrowness and saying, I'm going to be happy if I build tables. I'm going to be happy if I do what I want to do. Rather than, I'm going to be happy if I do whatever it is that God gives me to do. And if I'm in a group setting, what needs to be done. And you could say at certain points, you do need to take into account your own life path. If you get married and have kids, you can't live on the same salary that you could when you were single and young and didn't care. You see, you have to work with practical changes in life. But you can work with the same spirit, which says, what are the ways in which the universe needs me to do some things? There might be a range of things, but we want to harmonize with this connection to spirit, and then live in a way that allows us expansion rather than contraction. We expand our caring. We expand our mental capabilities. We have more energy. We help more people. We're concerned with greater and greater levels of, not just being concerned about my dinner, but concerned about the dinner of everyone on the planet. everyone in the universe. You begin to see this larger picture. And even if you're having not as much food as you want, you're willing to share, rather than the living in selfish consciousness is, hey, I'm not sharing, and not only that, but I'm taking some of yours because I'm bigger than you. You see? And people who live that way think, I'm going to be happier taking the things that belong to others. But they aren't happier. They might be fatter for a while, but they're not going to be happier. And eventually, that will lead to greater suffering. If we want to understand our Dharma, most importantly, we have to connect it to the love and joy and positive energy flow of life from within us. And then we have to enter into a conscious communication with life and ask the question, you could say, what am I supposed to do? Or even better is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Ask the universal consciousness in the way that you feel comfortable with, and ask the question, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do to solve this challenge, or to share the love, joy, to be serviceful, to expand our potentials? And we find that we ourselves become happier in the happiness of others. We ourselves become better fed when we're feeding others. We come up with solutions that will be good for the whole rather than just only myself. So then, in a very practical way, you have to look at the talents that God has given you and the opportunities that are presented. We used to do all kinds of jobs, and Kriyananda said very specifically, I don't recommend jobs for people just because they're good at them. Oh, that person has accounting experience, let's put them in accounting. No, maybe that person needs to balance that intellectual training, put them in the garden. Maybe doing something they're not even good at. And it's not like a life sentence. It's like creating balance in your, and a good director looks at the totality of each individual and the group as a whole, and begins to mix and match and train and do things that they can see down the road that this and this and this and this will lead to that. And this is why we go to the professor. Because the professor's had many students. He says, I've seen a lot of students come through, and if you do it this way, the chances are less success than if you do it this way. But you decide. People still, will make their own choices. And sometimes, of course, a parent, you allow the kids to make their own choices, and they see the results of those choices, some of which you could have predicted, either positively or negatively. But sometimes if you see a child doing something that you know is going to be too dangerous for them, then you have to say, no, that you don't get to do. And you're making a decision that you're saying they aren't yet ready to do that. So, you don't put a 5-year-old in a hang glider and say, go fly. That's not a good idea. And that's an extreme example. But we have to look at ourselves, and sometimes we need others to help us look at ourselves. This is a whole human resource position called, to evaluate the capabilities of a potential employee and figure out. Of course, they usually try to figure out what you're good at. But from a yogi's view, we want to look at that person and say, what would be helpful for the greater development of their ability to be in tune with and channel positive energies in life. And sometimes it'll take a few tryouts, say, try this. And you meet people, some people are born with, look, I'm going to be a doctor. And that's what they want to do. Okay. But they won't be a happy doctor unless they include their connection in here and create a positive balance in their lives. Otherwise, you can be a doctor, but you can be a selfish doctor, or you can be a selfless doctor. You can be a doctor who's grumpy, but is good at prescribing medications, or you can be a doctor that soothes the soul as well as the body, and who understands how to work with mental issues as well. And so we look at it from an outward personality level and say, look at a person's natural interests. So one of the things that people can look at is what interested them naturally as a youth. There's a story about Yogananda, a young boy who was in the ashram. A child of one of the devotees came, and Yogananda gave him a model airplane, and he later became a pilot. Yogananda could see this interest, and some people just have natural talents, and it's appropriate to express them. But some people, let's take a person who has a natural talent to be outgoing, and like the life of the party, and they take it to themselves. I like being the life of the party, and they take it to their ego and pride. That person shouldn't become an actor. If that person becomes an actor, they're just going to get more and more puffed up. Or if they do become an actor, they should get training in not getting puffed up, either before they do it or along while they do it. Because otherwise their approach to acting is going to lead to greater suffering. And this is something that we don't always take into account, is the totality of the person, and how is doing this thing going to affect the totality of their consciousness, and most importantly, their bliss level. And sometimes Dharma means doing something difficult to achieve a higher result. We also, you could say the greater the difficulty, the greater the reward, but some things don't need to be difficult. Why should it be difficult to love somebody? Well, in some cases it is, because they're prickly. They are like porcupines. But in other cases, you meet people that you just like. It's like you love them and you don't even know them. You just feel better in their presence. And that's what we want to do. We want to try to include that positive flow for ourselves within the range of our capability. We don't want to carry the pressure, I've got to be a saint. At the same time, we don't want to undersell our opportunity for happiness. So much of life is an adventure, and we don't know how it's going to work out. But we do know that if we disconnect from the heart, if we don't grow a positive flow of energy through our lives, then we won't be as happy as we're capable of being. We've got to connect to that universal potential. And remember that universal potential for happiness is also the potential for understanding and doing better at whatever your chosen endeavors are. Whatever you choose to do, you're bringing this universal connection with you to do a better job. So when you connect to love, you connect to wisdom, and that includes knowledge. So now if I decide to help provide water for the starving people in Africa, I'm going to be able to come up with creative ideas to do that. If I decide that I'm going to work in a retail store in a city, I'll come up with new ideas for placing the products and increasing sales in the store. And I'll be interested in talking to the customers. What are the products that you would like? And there was a CEO of a large company had many little grocery shops in America, and he wanted to go out and see what was going on. And he noticed that one particular outlet was selling more coffee than any other outlet. And so he went there in disguise and just observed. And he observed, that people were just coming in to the shop and getting their coffee in the morning. And staying there for a week or so, he saw that these people were coming regularly. And this was the top-selling coffee department in all of these grocery outlets. And so he's looking around, he's looking at the display and seeing where everything was placed. And he was, looking at maybe how many cups were on the table and just the way it all was on the outside. And then he didn't get it right away until he stood back and he noticed the lady who was in charge of that department was saying, "Oh, hi Bob, how you doing? Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. What's up with your son?" And this person was communicating in a friendly, outgoing way with all of these people. And they were all buddies. And now these people were coming because they had a friend in the shop. You'd like to go to the place where the person is your friend. You want to see that. You'll go in there not just to shop, but to see them. And then, of course, when you're in there, you might pick up something. And it was nothing to do with the coffee or the display. It was all to do with this person's energy. Kriyananda met a woman, I think it was in Paris, or Italy, one of the two. And he went into, they sold hats. I think they sold hats or scarves, something, anyway. And there was this lady behind the counter, and she was really stiff. And he asked her a question. She said, "Over there." And, he went over and looked, and then he asked her, "There." Of course, he was very aware, sensitive to the energy that was happening. And so he made a purchase, and he came over to her. And before he left, he said, I noticed that you're not very happy, and excuse me, but you're not very friendly, and I think there's a connection. If you instead of feeling tight and uncaring, if you feel caring about the people who come in, and you reach out towards them and be friendly to them, you're going to just be a whole lot happier. He said a few words like that. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he took the time to observe, and he shared this thought about shifting her energy in the way that she was relating to her life. This was his Dharma, and he was trying to affect her Dharma, her life. And he just happened to pass that shop, I think maybe it was a year and a half later. And he was just walking by, and this lady came running out of the store and came up to him and says, "Thank you. You have completely changed my life." We can completely change our lives at any point if we'll just stop for a moment and reassess. And if we aren't sure how to reassess ourselves, we just need to get some inputs from someone who maybe has more experience than us. And ask the universe to guide us to that circumstance. Ask the universe to help you find that circumstance that will help you to find your right Dharma, your right path. If we think that, I'm going to wait until I've got the bank account settled, and the house is all refurbished, and the kids are grown and out of the house, and then I'm going to apply myself to being happy. It's not going to happen. I mean, God bless the people who go there. I hope they can make that change, because we would be the first to say it's never too late to make a positive change in their life. But they're shortening their window of opportunity, and their time spent in discomfort may not have been necessary. And the waves that they create. So you see many people later in life, the parents have to go to the kids and say, hey man, I'm really sorry. I misbehaved. Or the kids have to go to the parents and someone says, oh man, I'm really sorry. And of course, that healing is great. But wouldn't it be better if that healing was unnecessary? Because everybody was in positive. We can't wait for the world to be happy. We have to choose happiness ourselves, and the way that we do that is to choose our path in life. Choose your path in life through your interconnection to universal potential, and then bring it out, bring it through your life. And keep seeking that environment which helps you to do that. Don't get stuck in the limits that most people say, it's too late for me to change. Yogananda said that most adults become what he called, by the age of 40 or 50, they become psychological antiques. They're just not able to change. Those people that got off the bus to see the beach after their reward for all those years of work, they were so stuck in a very narrow space that didn't allow them, or it certainly made it very difficult for them to break new ground, to really have a new life, and even better is to not have gotten to that space where you couldn't see what was going on. But even whenever you realize that you need to make a change, don't live in guilt, live in transformation. And so, Dharma, finding our path in life, it's got to be connected to this positive flow of energy through our lives. Without that, we won't experience as much happiness as we're capable of. We can't wait for the world through relationships and jobs and incomes. We can't wait for them to make us happy. We have to tune into happiness and let it flow through us. And then, worst case scenario is you're happy while you starve to death. And it's not real likely that that's going to happen. But that's worst case. Best case is that you're going to be happy no matter what happens. Isn't that a valuable approach? So this is the yogic approach, and we've seen at Ananda over the years that the people who give themselves to this, not defining their life by what it looks like on the outside, but what it is being expressed through them on the inside. And when you can harmonize that inside and let it guide the outside, then you living the Dharma that God has given you to live, which will include ups and downs, but on the inside, you're connected to the peace and the love and joy of the divine companion that is always available to us if we will include it in our consciousness.